In this Diablo 2 Resurrected Druid build guide, we're going to be covering the Volcanic Elementalist Druid. This is a beginner build that will comfortably get you through normal, which is the very first difficulty of Diablo 2 Resurrected. If you're looking for a beginner druid build and you aren't sure where to begin, then this Diablo 2 guide is for you. The Volcanic Elementalist Druid focuses on the fire spells of the elemental tree. You'll be using Fissure as your main way to deal damage to enemies and Molten Boulder as a utility spell. Fissure creates volcanic vents around an area, dealing very high damage per second to any enemy standing on top of them. As a Volcanic Elementalist, you'll invoke these fire patches and then lure enemies into them. If an enemy manages to survive, you can use the Molten Boulder spell to knock them back and stun them. This will retain them on the vents while keeping you safe at the same time. This build deals very high damage during the early and mid stages of the game, making it one of the easiest builds to complete your first playthrough. It's important to note that while powerful during the beginning of the game, this build will only remain viable through the first difficulty and up to around level 40. You can still run through Nightmare difficulty if you insist, but I wouldn't recommend it as you'll find much better options at this point in the game. If you're a new player, I strongly recommend you save the respec that you get from completing the first quest, Den of Evil. If you do, you'll be able to talk to Akara and respec your character into a different build once you reach Nightmare difficulty. Most builds in Diablo 2 Resurrected have a stat distribution that focuses on assigning enough points into strength to meet equipment requirements, enough dexterity to reach max block chance, and then assigning everything else into vitality to gain as much life as possible. And while this is true for most builds, it can be confusing to decide when you should assign these attribute points. Strength is a requirement for most equipment pieces of the game. During your first playthrough, you'll want to have enough points to slot the best equipment for each act. This is 35 strength in Act 1, 45 strength in Act 2, and 60 strength in Acts 3 to 5. From here, you should only assign points into strength if you find an item that is worth the investment. If not, just assign the points into vitality instead. For most builds, dexterity is important to increase block chance when using a shield. Since block chance is not that important at the beginning of the game, we won't be assigning any points here. All remaining points should be spent in vitality. Increasing vitality will greatly increase your health pool, which is essential to stay alive against large groups of enemies. Vitality also increases your stamina, allowing you to run much further without needing to rest. No points are required in energy. Fissure mana cost remains the same across all levels, so you won't have any problems here. The Volcanic Elementalist mainly focuses on the fire spells of the elemental tree, but you'll also distribute some points into summons to increase your survival chances if you wish. When cast, Fissure creates volcanic vents on the ground that will periodically deal damage to all enemies standing on top of them. The vent lasts for 3.2 seconds, while the spell has a 2-second cooldown, meaning that you'll only be able to keep 2 spells active at the same time. When facing melee enemies, you'll want to cast the spell right between you and them. This will force them to walk on top of the vents, ensuring they take full damage. Alternatively, while facing ranged enemies, you'll want to cast it right on top of them, and move around to avoid projectiles until they are dead. The Molten Boulder spell creates a giant flaming boulder that travels in a straight line and explodes when it comes into contact with enemies, dealing damage and knocking them back, which also briefly stuns them. The knockback and stun effect is dealt as an AoE, allowing us to push enemies away from us to keep them on top of the vents. The Firestorm spell creates 3 fire streams that move forward from your character. You'll be using this spell up to level 12 when you unlock Fissure. Firestorm synergizes with Fissure, increasing its damage by 12% for each level, so these points are not wasted while you wait to unlock Fissure. If you're having trouble surviving enemies, then sparing some points to unlock the Grizzly Bear might be a great option. The Grizzly Bear will move forward to engage enemies, luring their attention and forcing them to stay on top of the vents. This summon has no cooldown and can be freely cast while in combat, making it a perfect meat shield. The Oak Sage summon greatly increases your life by providing a massive 30% increase. While this is great on paper, the spirit has very low health, meaning that you'll have to constantly cast it while in combat. For this reason, I only recommend you go for it if you also go for the Grizzly Bear, since it affects both. For the skill distribution, you'll want to max the Fissure skill first. Once you've maxed out Fissure, you'll want to assign the remaining points into Firestorm and Volcano to further increase Fissure's damage through synergies. Alternatively, you can place some points in Summoning to unlock Grizzly once Fissure is maxed out, before you start pumping Firestorm if you wish. Here is a comprehensive guide on how to assign your skills, noting the alternate path for summoning. The idea here is that you use Firestorm until you can unlock Fissure and then swap to that. You'll also assign 1 point into Molten Boulder in the process as a prerequisite, and you should start using it together with Fissure at level 12. Runes are a special type of socketed item that will not only provide unique properties, but can also be combined with other runes to create what's called a rune word. Runewords can be formed by inserting runes in a specific order inside certain types of equipment. The item must be normal rarity, able to support the rune word, and needs to have the same amount of sockets as runes are required. Note that some magical items have sockets on them, but even if you put the runes in the right order, the rune word will not be created and you'll essentially lose your runes, so be sure to use normal rarity items only. While rune words are often referred to as endgame equipment, some of them can be crafted very early into Diablo 2 Resurrected and should not be so hard to come by. If you're lacking a base, you can check with the merchants as they often sell socketed items, but make sure that they are normal in rarity. Rune words are the most reliable way to gear up your character while you advance through the game, so I strongly suggest that you take a look at the complete list on our wiki and periodically check the runes that you have and rune words that you can craft. I've added a link in the description so that you can head to this page easily and bookmark it. Runes can be farmed by doing Countess runs. The Countess is a super unique monster that can be found inside the Forgotten Tower in Act 1. Each time you kill her, she will drop between 1 and 3 runes, and their level will depend on the difficulty setting you're playing on. Elemental resistances are key when trying to survive in Diablo 2 Resurrected. Most enemies deal elemental damage, and having high resistances will mitigate a great percentage of this damage. For this reason, I strongly recommend that you focus on equipment pieces that provide plus resistances during the normal difficulty of the game. You can check your current resistances by opening the stat menu and looking at the bottom of the menu. Resistances cap at plus 75%, and ideally you want to max all of them when you're reaching the end of normal difficulty. Make sure to periodically check your equipment to balance them out and get them as high as possible. Since loot is random, you won't have control over the equipment that you get during early and even mid-stage gameplay other than creating rune words. Having said that, there are some general guidelines on the stats that you should be looking for your items to make sure that your character scales up with increased difficulty. Note that faster cast rate is not that important for this build since Fissure is tied to a fixed cooldown which cannot be reduced. For helmets, the first thing you're going to be looking for is Druid pelts. These helmets often come equipped with plus skills, greatly boosting your damage. You're going to be looking for plus Fissure or plus Elemental Tree here. An important thing to note here is that you can craft rune words on Druid pelts as long as they are normal rarity and have the required sockets. If they happen to have plus skills, they'll retain those skills in addition to the rune word effects, making them particularly good. Another helmet that you can use is the Nadir rune word, which is made of the Nef and Tyr runes and can be used at level 13. This helmet provides a good amount of defense as well as plus 5 strength, allowing us to save some stats during early stages. The plus 2 mana per kill is also a great way to keep our mana reserves between fights. There is also the Lore rune word, which is made of the Ort Soul runes and can be equipped at level 27. If you happen to come across a Soul rune, then you can use it to craft this helmet, which provides plus 1 to all skills, as well as plus 30% lightning resistance. When it comes to weapons, the first thing you want to look out for is the Leaf rune word, which is made up of the Tyr and Ral runes and is equipable at level 19. This is the best weapon for this build as it provides plus 3 to fire skills, which includes all fire skills in the elemental tree, greatly increasing your output damage. It also provides a good amount of defense, as well as plus 33% cold resistance. The runes required can be farmed from the normal difficulty Countess, so you should make a couple of runs until you get a Tyr and Ral rune. Once you do, make sure to talk to Akara and buy a 2-socketed staff to create the rune word if you don't already have one. You can also use the Spirit rune word made up of Tal, Thul, Ort, and Am runes at level 25. This rune word can be crafted on both weapons and shields. It increases both your damage thanks to its plus 2 to all skills and plus 25 to 35 faster cast rate, as well as increasing your defense thanks to faster hit recovery, vitality, and life stolen per hit. Finding a 4-socketed weapon can be a little tricky, but stay on the lookout for crystal swords, longswords, and broadswords. If you happen to play the secret cow level, if you find any unsocketed of these types of weapons, you can get a guaranteed 4 sockets from Lar Zuk by completing the Siege of Harrogath quest. When it comes to shields, you want to be on the lookout for Ancient's Pledge rune word, which is made up of Ral, Ort, and Tal runes, and you can use it at level 21. This shield provides a huge boost to resistances. If you can't find an Ort rune, you can make one by combining 3 Ral runes inside the Herodric Cube. Note that if you're using the Leaf rune word as your weapon, you will not be able to use a shield. Another shield you can be on the lookout for is the Spirit rune word, which is made of Tal, Thul, Ort, and Am runes, and can be used at level 25. If you find the runes and a 4-slot shield, then Spirit is a great option as well. This shield provides plus 2 to all skills, greatly increasing your damage, and provides many defensive stats such as elemental resistances, faster hit recovery, and vitality. For armor, you want to be on the lookout for the Stealth rune word, which is made up of Tal and Eth runes, and can be equipped at level 17. This is by far the best armor that you can get early on. The 25% faster cast rate is nice, while the poison resistance and faster hit recovery, which allows you to recover control of your character sooner after each hit, provides you with more survivability. The faster hit recovery is very important as it usually helps you avoid stun locks when surrounded by enemies. When it comes to gloves, you want to focus on defensive stats such as life and resistances. Make sure to swap your belt as soon as you reach Act 2 for the maximum amount of potions. Regarding stats, you want to focus on life and resistances. Some merchants might offer magical belts with a lot of life on them, which are a great option. You'll want to search for faster run/walk speed on your boots as well as resistances in life. Run and walk speed is important to quickly navigate through the map, so make sure to get it. You'll want to search for rings that have life and resistances. Similar to rings, you'll want to find an amulet that provides life and resistances. An amulet that provides plus elemental skills can also be great for this build. You'll find many charms as you advance through the game. While having these in your inventory is great, they can easily occupy a lot of space, limiting the amount of loot you can pick up. Try to focus on plus life, plus resistances, and plus magic find, as these are the more important ones for your build. Act 2 Mercenaries are the best choice for all builds due to their paladin auras and the ability to equip polearm weapons. Being able to use polearms is very important because many powerful runewords can be created on them, providing various buffs or debuffing enemies. You can recruit this mercenary from Grease and Luke Lane. When it comes to selecting an aura, you'll want to select the Prayer Mercenary found on normal difficulty. The Prayer aura provides heal regeneration, allowing you to survive longer without using potions. Once you reach Nightmare difficulty, you can hire a Holy Freeze aura mercenary, which slows enemies around you, providing great crowd control. You won't have a lot of spare equipment during the beginning of Diablo 2 Resurrected, but you can equip him with any extra equipment you have or buy him a polearm from a merchant. If you happen to spare some runes, make sure to craft an Insight rune word on the polearm, as this weapon provides you with a meditation aura, greatly increasing your mana regeneration, as well as increasing your mercenary's combat capabilities. Final tips. Doing a couple of Countess runs will give you a lot of runes that will not only be useful for this build, but for any other character that you might make. Make sure to save all runes that you find inside your stash. If you're having trouble finding an item for your rune words, make sure to periodically check on merchants as they usually have good bases. You can assign your Molten Boulder attack to the normal attack slot, allowing you to only swap between your Fissure and Summon skills. You can attack from your current position by holding Shift on PC. If you're using controller, this will not be an issue for you. The Molten Boulder skill knockback affects a small AoE, so you can aim for walls or columns and still hit your enemies. This can be useful at choke points such as doors or small rooms. While Firestorm is not that great for map exploration, you can use it for boss fights in combination with Fissure to maximize your damage output. If you happen to find a good unique or set item that you like, don't hesitate to swap it with your current gear. I excluded all unique and set items from this guide because there's no reliable way of acquiring them early on. This build is somewhat mana hungry, so I personally like to run my belt with 1x healing potion columns and 3x mana potion columns, but you can also add antidote potions or thawing potions. Using these potions will not only cure their respective status effect, but also provide a plus 50 resistance to their corresponding elemental resistance. Once you equip an Insight rune word on your mercenary, he'll be your main way to recover mana, so make sure to keep him alive by using potions on him. To do this, press and hold Shift and then right-click on the potion you wish to use. If you're playing on controller, hold down the left trigger and press the appropriate button on the D-pad. Stay tuned for more Diablo 2 guides, and be sure to check out our Diablo 2 Resurrected wiki for more information about the game. So what did you guys think of this build guide? What class are you guys playing in Diablo 2 Resurrected? Let us know in the comments below.